Hello there, everybody, and you're all very welcome to the show. To find out who our first guest is, I hand you over to our beautiful MC for the evening, the wonderful Mr. Fred Cook.
Thank you so much, Tommy. Well, our guest is Mr. Brent Pope.
Hello there.
Hello, how are you?
Sit down and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Whereabouts in New Zealand
Do I hail from?
Yeah.
A small little, I suppose, a country town called Ashburton, about 50 miles south of Christchurch. So if anybody's been out to New Zealand, if you're travelling the South Island, you're going from Christchurch to, say, Dunedin or Queenstown, you'll go through Ashburton.
I have a feeling I have a brother living in Ashburton.
Feeling of a brother.
There's a couple of Tiernans went south, so I have a sister in Tauranga.
Yeah, Tauranga, yeah, lovely.
In the North Island.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And I have a fantastic younger brother who is in and around Ashburton, I think.
He could well. How long has he been out there?
Do you know him, do you think?
No,
Is he in trouble?
my mother, no, because my father, when he was alive, anybody that's Irish that comes into town and knows the name, because the name Pope is not particularly familiar.
Yeah.
So they'd always say, you know, if they're in the bank or something like that, they'd always say, you're not happen to be Brent Pope's parents. And they'd say, yeah. And they say, oh, you know, wow, they get quite a thrill out of it. So I'm thinking if he was in the bank or something out there, something like that.
No.
Or
he's more of an outlaw.
or more, well, he might have been involved with my father. My mother, if he was involved in horse racing as well, that would be because that background comes from.
Where does the name Pope come from? Like, what was the... How did the family end up in New Zealand? Oh, really?
Both sides of my parents. So I'm more Irish. I did a DNA test over COVID. So I'm 98% Irish and 2% Scandinavian. So I presume that's from the Vikings. But yeah, my mother's side with Doyles and O'Briens. They came originally from Limerick, Morgan O'Brien, and my father's side then was, I thought it was more English, but I found out later that was also the Irish side. I think it comes from Cork. I think that the name Pope. You'd think it would be English, but I think that my father's side is also Irish.
How come you settled over here?
It was a fluke, really, because I needed to get out of New Zealand. I was having some, I suppose, difficulties in my life at that stage, and I just wanted a break. So I got 2 offers to come and play rugby. I was playing top-level rugby in New Zealand at that time. It was an amateur game. So I got a call about half an hour from each other one Saturday night. One was from Italy to go and play for Rome University or something, Italy, which would have been nice. And the other one was to come and play rugby for St Mary's in Dublin.
Oh, yeah.
And so I thought about I'd be lying if I said, you know, I'd be sort of a plastic paddy if I said I was brought up Irish. I wasn't, but I was brought up knowing a lot about my own name, the O'Briens, about the Doyles, and so I knew enough about that. And I thought I'd like to come back over and see a bit of that sort of Irish culture. But I got a bit of a shock, I'd have to say. I mean, coming in from the airport, because I'd left New Zealand in the summer, coming off the beach, getting into an airport, getting off the plane, and taking that bus trip in from the airport in those days into Dublin. It was pretty drab. I mean, it was pretty grey, and I thought, oh God, you know, what have I arrived into?
You're talking like late 80s, early 90s? Is that
yes, 1990. But yeah, around that 1990 time, because my father had visions of Ireland being like the Commitments, or being like Angela's Ashes or something, because that's all we saw in New Zealand. So then I was met by officials at St Mary's, and I was subsequently taken down to Legs nightclub, in which I spent probably every Saturday night for about the next 5 years in that place. But anyway, so I was passed around members of the club with a few drinks, and of course, you know, somewhat intoxicated, I suppose, at the end of the night. I was left to my own devices. So I remember coming out of Legs with my bag, and it was raining, and standing out there and saying, I don't know Dublin, I've no money, I don't know anybody in the club, you know, what do I do? And a taxi driver took pity on me and stopped and said, you look lost. And I said, well, I am a bit. And he said, where are you meant to be? I said, well, I don't know. I said, but I said, I'm playing rugby. I've been brought over to play rugby for St Mary's. And he said, oh, yeah, up in Temple Oak. He said, let's go up there. And he said, to see if anybody's still up. You know, it was about 2 a.m, so I don't know. But so anyway, he arrived me up there, and there was, of course, nobody up. And he left me. So the first night I had in Ireland, I spent sleeping. I remember I had one of those old dry as a bone jackets, you know, like Australians and New Zealand used to wear. So I huddled under that in the rain with my little bag in the foyer of St Mary's Rugby Club until the next morning someone was coming to open up, and he sort of stood over me and he looked down. He said, "Oh, you must be Pope, our foreign player." And I thought, can you imagine Brian O'Driscoll or something going over now to France and being left in a thing? But I loved Ireland. You know, I fell in love with. I'm not saying so much I fell in love with the country scenic wise, because it was very much like New Zealand. I fell in love with the history, and also fell in love with the people. And I'd have to say that's been my sort of. I suppose that's been my greatest thoughts and memories of Irish people. They were so generous of spirit, and there was so many random acts of kindness. I remember a guy from the club turning up when I was spending Christmas alone, and he wouldn't have it, and he turned up with a present in the morning, and somebody else turned up and took me up to their house, and you know, people were so welcoming into your house and that when you didn't know them. And I then decided it's Ireland's where I want to be, you know, and that's where I made my life ever since, you know.
Would you consider yourself a vulnerable person?
Very vulnerable, very vulnerable. Yeah, I've had difficulties, and I've been open about them. I've had difficulties with mental health, and I suffered from major panic attacks and anxiety attacks from an early age, and I hid it. Sadly, I couldn't get help, you know, in those stages. If I went to teen doctors or whatever, you know, they'd just look at me and say, you know, haven't you got all these things going on? You know, isn't life good, or something like that? And I buckled, you know. It was just too much pressure, and it was too much. There was too many things going on in my life. And I remember ringing my father, you know, 6'3" guy, you know, I was a bit heavier then, 17 stone, and ringing my father from a payphone one night in tears, just saying, "Dad, you know, come and get me. I can't play rugby anymore. I can't go on like this. I don't know. I can't go on continuing to live a lie that I'm okay, because I'm not okay." And you know, that was the start of reaching out for help. And thank God I did, because I made a call to the Samaritans one night when I was in a particularly low period. It's emotional for me now even, but to go back to those days, that they saved my life, you know. I'll always remember to this day, you know, as long as I live, this wonderful voice at the end of the line just said, "What's wrong, friend?" And I don't know what it was with that word friend. It just resonated with me. Here's someone that doesn't know me and is prepared to be my friend, you know, because I just wanted to be hugged and told it's going to be okay, Brent. You know, that's what I wanted, and nobody could give me that. And my visions of seeking psychiatric care at that stage was like a bit like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It was like, you know, that you'd be put in a straitjacket, that I'd make the Sunday papers for the wrong reasons, you know. And so I didn't know how to heal myself. I didn't know. I didn't know who to turn to. I couldn't talk. My parents were loving and that, but they didn't. You know, they couldn't understand. How could they? You know, because my father was a strong, silent type. You know, kind of a John Wayne type of figure in my life. What, you know, that he found it difficult enough to kind of share emotions and that, but I mean, he did it in a loving way, that as he could, but he wouldn't understand, you know.
What?
So that's been part of my life ever since. And
can I ask you, Brent, what do you think it was, or that is, that you're looking for?
There's a song there somewhere. Still haven't found it. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what it is I'm looking for. I just kind of think I'll know it when I find it, you know. And my brother has been a rock for me, you know. And I went back and studied to be qualified as a psychotherapist for my own journey.
Yeah.
Not for journey to necessarily help people, but I felt I have a voice too. You know, a big part of my life is saying, okay, well, if it's okay for a strong rugby player to say, hey,
like in every sense, in both Irish and Kiwi culture, a warrior.
A warrior.
Yeah.
And no more stereotypical macho sport in the world than rugby. You know, I was a tough player. You know, and anybody will tell you that over here from the breadth of the country, when they played, I was tough. I left it all out on the field. You know, yes, I could take a punch and I could give a punch, but that was rugby in those days. You know, I mean, you had to be tough, and to make it over New Zealand at such a young age, when I did, you had to stand up for yourself, and you had to, you know, otherwise the first box you get in the line out, you had to turn around and give the person a box back. That's just the way it was. You know, thankfully it's not like that anymore, but that was the sort of era I grew up in.
And these are big fists coming towards you.
Oh, big fist. I remember actually a bit of a funny story. I remember I was working on a farm as a fencer, contract fencer. So I was strong. You know, I was carrying, you know, sort of sheep around, like a bit like those sort of stereotypical, carrying a couple of fencing strainers under each arm up a hill. I was fit, man. I came back and I got my first foray into senior rugby, and I was about 17 or 18. So I was young, going into a man's game, and I thought I could handle myself. You know, I could handle myself out in the streets and that. You know, like I was quite handy in that regards, and I was aggressive. So I had all those ingredients, and I remember jumping on someone's shoulder in the line-out, which you didn't do. It wasn't a gentlemanly act. Like you couldn't propel yourself up now. You weren't lifted. Yeah. You had to get up on your own speed. So anyway, I used this opposition's shoulder to launch up and catch the ball. And at the next line-out, and it turned out, I know the guy's name. His name was O'Malley. And anyway, he looked at me, and he was a lot older than me. He was probably about 30s, mid-30s, coming to the end of his career. And I was just starting, and he said, you do that once more to me, he said, I'm going to break your nose. And my reply to him was, hey, there's no good just talking about it, old man. He turned around, he broke my nose. So I'm going off the pitch with my nose splattered, bleeding, saying, what the hell did I say? So lesson learned, keep your big mouth shut, Brent.
Yeah.
But going back to, so rugby was a stereotypical industry. You couldn't show fear. You couldn't show your vulnerable side. You could show it. Like, you weren't even allowed to roll around in pain if you got injured.
Yeah.
You know, you got straight back up on your feet, don't show your injury, don't show weakness. That was all my life from it, was don't show weakness, you know, don't show vulnerability. The number of times that I was told to, you know, toughen up, man up, harden up, real men don't cry. Well, hey, yes, they do, you know.
So what form did, I mean, your rehabilitation is the wrong word, but what form did gathering yourself again take?
It took a form of coming to Ireland. It took a form of going after, you know, work in the media and something like that. It took a form of being proud of what I've done, of my achievements, both sporting wise and media and work off media. Being, you know, that took shape in my life over the last, you know, 30 years since I've been here, because I am proud of my life. You know, do I have regrets? Yes, I do. We all do. I mean, part of that is around family. Part of that is around not having my own family, and part of it is around, you know, I lost my father a couple of years ago before COVID. I had to put my mother into a rest home there again just before COVID, and that's hard. And not seeing them, not having shared, you know, maybe the last 20 years of their lives like they haven't shared mine. You know.
When you say regrets not having your own family, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, because I think you know, I haven't been physically too well the last couple of years, and going off to doctor's appointments or whatever like that, or ending up in hospital for periods of times or something like that when you're alone, is a pretty scary place to be.
How are you going to go about meeting somebody?
Well, I hope to get a few numbers off the show. I don't know. Yeah, that's a you know, suppose that's a question, because I mean, I was just talking to somebody else there outside, and I said, I've never liked that tag of being a bachelor. You know, I've never liked that tag of, you know, if my home's been up, there's something on TV or something, it's, you know, Brent Pope's bachelor pad, or, you know, that you're living this high life of sort of, you know, stuff like that. I haven't. I'm an extremely social person, and I love my friends, and for the most part, I love my life. And I certainly love my time being over here. Meeting somebody, I suppose, yeah, it's certainly difficult in this this environment, because I haven't even thought about it, you know.
There's a funny phrase that you just remind me of there, and the phrase is, it is in the doldrums that we make most progress.
Yeah, great. Love that. I love that.
So,
no,
which is kind of,
yeah.
That's not something you often hear.
No, but it's lovely.
To respect.
And it's good to hear, yeah.
To respect the fallow periods, to respect the quiet.
No,
to
exactly.
Respect,
because that's part of living.
Yeah.
And that's part of life.
No, it's been
Yeah.
a great chat, and thank you very much for coming on the show.
No,
Brent.
thank you. And I thank you for being kind with me and being vulnerable with me too, because it means a lot.
That's it. That's us. That was great.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Wow.